Hello and welcome to Mystic Dog Mama, the podcast for soul-led dog mamas, where you'll discover how to best nourish your dog and yourself, mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Dr. Alexia Meller. Hi there, I'm so glad that you're here with me today. Thanks for joining. This is a really special episode for me because today we're celebrating 6 months of the Mystic Dog Mama podcast and 6 months of growing this beautiful community together. And so, as you've probably noticed, I'm doing something a little bit different and I'm recording my intro and outro outside. The birds are chirping away and summer is upon us, and I definitely thought that the birds offered a nicer background than the hum of the fan. When I first decided to create the podcast, I set the intention that this would be a safe space to bring people together to talk about what nourishment for our dogs, ourselves, and the planet could actually look like. But I never imagined that this little corner of the internet could create such a sense of home for myself and for those of you who are joining me on this journey. We live in a strange time-space continuum that can be so divisive and so alienating. It's such a testament to the canine spirit that a little 10-pound chihuahua walked into my life and became the catalyst for creating such a beautiful community. I'm grateful to each and every one of my guests and to each and every one of you for listening. This means the world to me to have you and your pups walking the spiritual path alongside being lucky. In this special episode, I've created a compilation. If you've been with me for a while, you'll know that at the end of each episode, I ask all of my guests what dogs have taught them about what it means to be human. The answers are so profound and beautiful, and they offer a real opportunity to reflect on who we are as individuals and who we aspire to be as a collective. I've brought all of my guest answers to this particular question together in this episode so that you can hear them again in one timeline. I hope you enjoy hearing the breadth and depth of their responses. I've listed everyone in the timestamps so you can see the speaking order. This is also a special episode because I'm announcing the winner of the free animal communication session giveaway. Thank you to everyone who submitted a review on Apple Podcasts, and like I've mentioned before, I'll be offering other ways and opportunities to win some goodies in the future. But for now, I'd love for you to please join me in congratulating M at Summit Dog Rescue in Boulder. I'm thrilled to be able to offer this session to you, and I'll reach out to you directly to set that up. Now, before we get started, a quick note that this episode was sponsored by Aspirationary, which, in full transparency, is another project of mine where we create books, notebooks, and stationery to help you become all you aspire to be. You can check out our shadow work and moon magic journals and workbooks, as well as our popular My First Period tracker for young girls and tweens on Instagram at Aspirationary, and that's spelled Aspirationery. Okay, let's go. So I guess along those lines, I'd be curious to ask you, what do you feel like your dog has taught you about what it means to be human?
Wow, I usually ask that question. I didn't really have an answer. Let me think. I mean, at the base level, just that symbiosis between a human and a wolf it's real. Like I know you can sign language with a chimp and they can say, like, I had a professor that raised an orangutan and it signed tomato toothpaste. And she couldn't understand like what it was trying to say. His name was Chantek, and it was signing tomato and toothpaste, and it wanted ketchup. But the orangutan put those abstract ideas together and spoke, which is just whoa. But a dog can't necessarily do that. I know there's like Bunny the dog with the little buttons that talks and stuff, but
Yeah.
It's without just sign language and like syntax and what would be the word, semiotics with a dog. I can understand what he's thinking sometimes, and like I can tell when he's anxious. I can tell like sometimes he wants to be pet and like loved on, sometimes he absolutely doesn't, and that is exactly something I do. And like just I can't really put words to it. It's just like there's a communication with an animal, and like we are still connected to this. We're not above zoology. Like we're still connected to dogs in that sense. Like we're zoological entities that have way too much brain capacity that we forget about that, I think is the thing. And like there's still on some level like a way like we communicate with dogs. I don't want to say like telepathically, but I know exactly what you mean by that. Like it just he's taught me that. It definitely taught me patience and respect for animals because like I said, he's not like any other dog I've had. Um he's truly an individual that like I have to work around and it's my responsibility to take care of him. And yeah, just learning about like for what I do with dog archaeology and anthropology, just having my so if I read something about how natives on the plains used dogs or how people in Siberia or aboriginals in Australia used their original dogs, like I can you look at my dog and think about those situations with him like as a proxy. It's nowhere near the same like when I lived in Augusta, Georgia. I can't really fathom being an aboriginal in the middle of Australia with a dingo, but it just at least I have a dog to like something to think about with it. If all that makes sense.
Yeah. You got
Yeah.
a frame of reference.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
just I learn from him every day, especially that thing in the woods. Like it's just that's something that I think you have to experience to be like, wow, that's cool. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Amazing.
What about you?
Good question. Throwing it back. I think one of the biggest things that Lucky continues to teach me is presence.
Okay.
And in terms of what it means to be human, really recognizing that our job is to be stewards. We're here to be stewards. And in order to understand that and what that means in terms of kind of the practical actions, it's really being present. How present can I be? That's where all of the power is. And it's also a really great reminder for me when I tend to get frustrated or I can get sort of sidetracked by all of my different thoughts. And in fact, I came across, I believe it was an Eckhart Tolle quote recently that talked about thoughts are basically the interrupters of presence. That you know you're not present when you are wrapped up in your thoughts. And so using that as a constant reminder, and dogs in general are just massively present. Everything is present for them. And I really do think that that's just been such a reminder for me is when I notice when I'm kind of going off on one, he forces me to come back and just be present and be a witness. And I think that touches on a bit of what I imagine your experience in the woods with your dog is, that you are keenly present of everything that's going on around you in those kinds of moments.
Yeah. And I specifically go there to like ground, like to just unplug and just be in touch with myself. And like it works. And yeah, he does kind of center me in that sense. Like even when we're not in the woods, like just like mornings where you hit the snooze button like 3 times and you're like, I don't want to work today. He will come up and it's the time of morning where he wants to eat. And sometimes he'll even give me like an extra snooze. He won't bother me. But he'll come in and then he'll put his face on my bed and then start pawing and then going like until like I get up. And again, agency, 1, and then 2, it brings you back like out of your head and like, all right, I have to, especially during COVID. It was like some days like when I didn't have work because it was remote work and like what was I going to do that day? Like it's a reason to get out of bed. Like I got to feed the dog. I got to, we got to take him for a walk. Got to do all that. Like I can see why for people that really need emotional support animals, like how that is just a constant grounding mechanism.
Yeah.
Things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you experienced that too.
Yeah. And I think it's even more and more needed in the crazy world that we live in. Because like you're saying, I don't think that it's just that ADHD is a response and an adaptation to what's going on. I think all of us are experiencing some form of needing to adapt to an environment that is completely not natural for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
everything that goes along with that.
Mhm.
And then with what you're saying about dogs too, like there's still wolves adapting to Homo sapien life, so they have to adapt with us through all that.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it is really interesting. I've heard so many stories about like those COVID babies and COVID dogs. Like, or I got a COVID puppy, how there's so much behavioral issues because of that.
Yeah.
I also saw something the other day that babies that were born like went through like either from were born or toddlers during COVID have an increased chance to, I don't want to say this is 100% true. It was just something I read. But like an increased chance for autism or like inabilities to read people's faces because of all the mask wearing and things. Which I never really thought about, but that makes sense because everything, like dogs are even evolved to understand our facial cues and things like that. So dogs too, I wonder how much especially a puppy that needs to learn all those social cues very quickly. If we're wearing masks in public, like how are they going to read you around other people?
Yeah.
I mean, not saying not to wear the mask, but it's like that's a fact that happened.
Yeah. It impacts. It definitely
Yeah.
impacts. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Interesting
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Absolutely, and they will. And I've got another question for you. It's seemingly off topic, but it's totally in line with this. I ask every guest, from your own personal experience, what do you feel that dogs, either your own dogs or those of clients that you've seen as well, have taught you about what it means to be human?
What it means to be human. Well, I think I use them as a mirror. So I look at them and see how are they doing, and if they are doing fine, then I know I'm also doing fine, and we have this big connection. So I reflect them. I think they show me how I am feeling. Like I told you before with Alma, when I get stressed, she is on the couch and showing me, "Calm down, mom." So that's what she's showing me. The two others, they well, my little Phoebus that I showed you before, the anal glands and so on. What he had done for me, uh,
Yeah.
he means the world for me. I couldn't have done all this without, especially him, but also the two others, because they had shown me that all the things I do, they are correct, they are right, and other dogs can benefit from this because they are so sweet to lie still, to let me touch them and feel them, and where is that point, and where is that reflex, and so on. And they do it because they are, I think they are put in the world to help me build all this up. Yeah, I really do think
Absolutely.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Oh, I love it. I love it. Gigi, something I ask everyone who comes on, and I'd just like to throw this out to you as well, is what do you feel your dog has taught you about what it means to be human?
I think from her, it's the art of really deep connection, like mindful connection. She does not abide if you're hanging out with her and then paying attention to, say, a device, for example. Like she will literally like find a way to like get up into your face.
Yeah.
And then she has these big golden eyes. And I appreciate that because we're so fragmented and distracted, and we think all these other things are so much more important, and they're not. And so I think that's the biggest thing I have learned from her that the best thing I can do for myself is just really, have eye contact with someone and really just kind of lavish attention on them and then receive, because that's what I do with her. We literally just stare into each other's eyes, and she lavishes me with that look, and I just lavish her with love, and it's amazing. And I mean, imagine if we treated all our relationships that. I'm not saying you should walk up to everyone and like rub their bellies. That's weird. But, imagine if like what it would be like to every time you're with someone, just be like, really lean in and just be like, yes, I'm so excited I saw you today. And I love that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Oh, I love that so much. Well, there's a question I like to ask each of my guests, and I wonder if you'd be so gracious as to answer it for me this time. But one of the things I'd like to kind of look at is, in your experience, whether it's your own dogs or it's the dogs that you've seen in practice, what do you feel that dogs have taught you about what it means to be human?
Well, it's taught me what a privilege it is to be human. It is extraordinary. Yeah, it's really very, very important. And once you start to appreciate the privilege that we've got, you can relate to them and recognize their specialties and be in awe of their athleticism, their visual acuity, their auditory acuity, their sense of smell, their sense of joy, their sense of what it is for them that makes them canines and what makes them
They are gifts. Yeah.
Yeah. And even, silly little diminutive chihuahuas. Yes, they think they're wolves. They think they're big, powerful carnivores. You can't help but admire them.
I know.
For their delusions, complete delusions. And yeah, I mean, I've got pictures. This was my secretary's dog, Gidget, and I remember her. This is Jed, and this is where he was a baby, and here he is when he's grown up.
Beautiful. Yeah. I am of the opinion that dogs are our biggest teachers in many respects when they come into our lives. And as I had mentioned to you before we started recording, that I had gone to see the curandero who told me that I needed to be on the lookout for dogs and cats that crossed my path, because they were healers for me and teachers for me. And I don't think I realized what that really meant until this little 4.3 kilo wolf came into my home. And as you said, he definitely thinks he is, and has taught me more than I could ever show him gratitude for.
That's right. So therefore you owe him in return the very best you can do. And
Absolutely.
For them, the very best in their mind is to be able to rip and tear and chew
Absolutely.
the key to the carnivore code, the raw meaty bones. And I'll just reach for this thing here and look at this abomination. So I'm now bringing in a degree of negativity, but I found this in the paddock the other day, and this is what our society does to those animals that so crave to rip and tear and chew. And they make plastic bones, and you can, if you can see this thing, and if I bring it closer to the camera, you can see some poor dog, not mine, but somebody, it had been sinking its canine teeth into this thing at the ends there, desperate to try and get some benefit, but being cheated all the way through. So that's what we do with the modified wolves. We cheat them, we defraud them, we deny them what they need. So just turn that around, stop feeding out of the can, pack it, feed them raw meaty bones. You will have a happy, healthy carnivore, and your spirits will be uplifted too.
I want to ask you a final question.
Yeah.
That I ask all of my guests, and that is, how have dogs taught you about what it means to be human?
Oh my God. And this comes at the end.
Well, you've touched on a lot of things that could be applied to it, but I love to hear when we reflect upon, again, in that sense of the mirroring.
Yeah.
What are our experiences with our dogs actually showing us about ourselves?
Well, to answer that, really, truly, and profoundly, it would be they've taught me everything, because I come out of an experience of childhood post-traumatic stress syndrome, stemming from the age of 4, when I was 4 years old. And animals, horses and dogs, not so much dogs then, but horses, because I was a real horse crazy child, were my main experience of physical and kind of deep love and affection. Right. And so then, more as an adult, when I began, I got my first dog of my own in my own household, not long after I graduated from college. And I do think, because those dogs had behavior issues and I was working with trauma in them and client dogs, it has been dogs who allowed me to revisit my own trauma, which had been completely misrecognized my whole life. It was diagnosed as everything but trauma.
Right.
So I had years of therapy. Like a lot of people, I've had years of therapy, which helped, sort of. It helped. But no human therapist put it together for me like my work with traumatized dogs. And then I recognized I had a real aha moment. Yes, this is me. Back at age 4. And putting all the pieces together, learning so much about human trauma studies, going through that myself, using a lot of those, and then adapting them for dogs. I mean, it's really enabled me for the first time, and I'm not going to say how old I am, but in decades to really feel like, okay, I understand who I was, why I did what I did. No, I wasn't just being one of those children who were untrainable, unlovable, just being difficult, all the things they get diagnosed as being. And no one is recognizing that it's coming. It's an adaptive survival strategy for a much deeper emotional learning.
Very welcome. And I wanted to ask you something that I ask all of my guests, and that is, we've sort of touched on elements of this, but I wondered if you might have a different reflection on what dogs, or what your dog in particular has taught you about what it means to be human.
Yeah, I think it's to just be yourself in the world. Because my dog is very enlightened in this way, but he's just who he is. He just does his thing. And it would not ever make sense to him to be like, well, I can't be myself. I need to like think up a whole bunch of ways to edit myself for the day.
Right.
No, I think the biggest thing he's taught me is that it really is a beautiful thing to be yourself in the world. Like it touches me and my partner's life, even the people that pass on the street and see him being himself in the world. It's not this selfish, horrible thing. I think sometimes there can be this kind of like self-sacrificing element to some of the messages we get in the world about how it just sounds horrible to just be that self-indulgent. But when I see my dog being himself like that, I don't ever think, wow, you're really self-indulgent. Just being yourself in the world, it makes it easier for everybody. And I think that's been really illuminating for me. Continues to be something I think about every day.
Oh, wonderful. Susan, I have one final question for you that I ask all of my guests, and I have alluded to it, of asking it myself as well. And that is, normally I would say, what have dogs specifically taught you about what it means to be human? But I also think it would be appropriate to ask you, what do you feel that the elementals have taught you about what it means to be human?
They have taught me about the profound responsibility we have as human. And they've also shown me the exquisite spiritual beauty, creative, co-creative beauty of nature and humans.
I wanted to ask you as well something that I ask, because I feel it's kind of timely to ask you this, something I ask all of my guests, which is, what do you feel that dogs, whether it's your own dogs or from all the stories that you've been able to engage with, what have dogs taught you about what it means to be human?
That's a great question. I think it gets back to what I was saying I've learned in the last year. I've learned more about being human in the last year than ever before. And I've been alive 49 years. So that's a lot of years to trump. But I think I've had to whittle down to the core of what it means to be human this year, because I can't travel or socialize or go to bars or go to restaurants or do all the fun things that made me feel very alive before. And at the core of being human is just this bottomless wellspring of love. And we need a place to put it, and we need to receive it. And I think if you have ample amounts of giving and receiving love, you can handle almost anything. See? Oh, God. It's like he knew what I was saying there.
Laura, he never does this. He's
Really?
generally during interviews, he's like asleep there or like on the bed doing he has been so active while you've been here. He's
it's like the minute I said that humans need to give and receive love, he gives you a kiss.
A giant kiss.
A giant kiss. And so I think what it is to be human at our core is the same as what it is to be a dog. I think it's the same. And I think we've clouded it and muddied it through years of like over cognitive, like extra cognitive abilities that I don't think make us better humans or happier humans. And I think at our core, we're just exactly the same.
I'd like to ask you something that I ask all of my guests as well, which we've touched on some of this, but I'd love your personal perspective on this as well. Of when we invite animals, for example, as our teachers into our lives, what do you feel that they have taught you personally, or that they are teaching us generally about what it means to be human?
Animals, there are different categories of these contracts with animals. You like dogs, right? And specific dogs. Yeah. So we're talking about a specific clan of animals that comes from the wolves, originally from the wolves. And the attributes of this particular embodiment is a pact, to be in a pact, to be together. And that's one of the first lessons in humanity right now, because we are, in our arrogancy, we think that we can do it by ourselves. Right. The sense, especially here in the North, is about being individual, being independent, being, alone. And it's a great, great epidemic of loneliness and depression because of that. So the animal comes as a way of reminding us that original company, that original sense of brotherhood, that in the beginning the wolves protect us and help us to go hunting and survive, and they were great partners in the survival. Now we don't go hunting, but we project our emotions. At the moment that you go through any of channels and so on, and they treat the dogs as humans, that's a projection of that lacking certain relationship between collaboration in clans, in human clans. We're more towards the division of race, of economics, of etc., education, rather than being it together. So dogs bring that sense of togetherness, that sense that, yes, you need to come out of yourself unconditionally, loving unconditionally, accepting the other that have no logic, right? Dogs have no logic. Only want to play, feed, and be with you.
Right.
So that original connection is stimulated in humans through the animal kingdom. And that also the extra stress that humans have. The dog kingdom have volunteer takes some of that to alleviate that stress of lacking the partnership, the cooperation. So it's not unusual that, let's say, a person that is overstressed or have an illness or something, and the dog die.
Right.
With the same illness.
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that partnership of the dog kingdom that say, let's help? It's the dog world. It's the dog agreement. So we have modified genetic the dog to make it almost like the baby in respond to that sense of lacking. I am not a creator. I need to take care. But who I take care? Another human being is danger because it won't agree with me, will betray me, will want something from me, but not my dog.
Right.
A safe relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So it serves as a transition in couples to have the first baby. It serves as the single ones to have a motherhood sense of protection and nourishment. It serves as a child as the first company, and so on. Right? So from the wolf to be living with us as a baby, if you see the development of the conscious of the dog awareness. Right?
Yeah.
There always have been this partnership with humans. While humans need it. But it's not necessarily in other worlds.
Right.
Where the human feel complete in itself. The wolves are in the wolves,
right.
They don't need that help, that emotional support.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a race of the agreement between two races.
Absolutely.
How long it will last, I don't know, but it serves many purposes.
Yeah.
Depending on the person.
Absolutely. I also feel like, as in this time where we as humans are often so disconnected from nature, as we've mentioned, feel that way, that dogs serve as a gateway. We have invited a wild being, into our homes, as you're saying, into our worlds. And they also get us out in nature. We go out for walks with them. We take them out to the beach. We do a variety of activities. So they facilitate, in addition to that sense of companionship, they facilitate us re-engaging. As well as I was chatting with somebody recently about how dogs are unashamedly themselves. All of themselves. They have no shame about their natural needs, for example, and who they are. And I think that's also part of the teaching, kind of extending on what you were just talking about, that if we choose to open ourselves up to that, they are teaching us to fully love and accept ourselves as well. All the things that we have that we deem shameful about ourselves, they are there to mirror back to us that those are the places that need love.
Yeah, it reflects the known mind. I think that's one of the major things. And sadly, in that partnership also, we need to be aware what is it that we contribute to the dog kingdom. And I have witnessed dogs having guilt, having shame.
Wow.
Right.
That they've picked up from humans. Right. So again, it's an invitation, like you were describing, of being conscious of what our out breath is, that there's a responsibility for what we're putting out there in our own particular experiences, but also the impact that has on those around us.
And it's more in the emanation of our energy, because the dog, animals and nature pick up our vibration.
Yeah.
And the fundamental distortion of our beauty, grace, and light have turned into guilt. And that's what they pick up. You know, you see a dog and say, "Who did that?" If they did it, they shrink.
Right.
They have a sense of morality. Why? You see that in a wolf? No. No.
Yeah.
So it's it's to be aware. So why do I have it, and what do I impose on that? What is the exchange? What is my vibration? It's not what I say, right? It's the same thing with a child. You can say to a child, "You're a good girl," but if you're emanating anger, you can be as sweet as you want with the child, but the child won't listen to the words. It will listen to the emanation of the mother. In any relationship, you pick up the emanation. But when you're tender in the molding period of your life, and dog is one, animals are, as a child as well, you pick up the emanation and you get formed by that emanation.
Right.
We're formed by the emanation of the earth, of the collective, mostly.
Right.
The majority of us, when you are not a sovereign person, you belong to the collective.
Right.
And the collective have violence, guilt, shame. So it's to take yourself out of there by being more you, by rejecting in words, actions, any guilt, any shame, any fear. That's not real. That's imposed. Then you won't need any more animals. They will come to you if they need something, but it will be like just a touch in the street. You know, I have an anecdote. Once we were walking in the plaza in Cartagena. There were 5 o'clock in the morning, and we were doing a ceremony to remove the negativity of the Inquisition in the plaza. And out of the blue, 5 dogs, 5 o'clock in the morning, come. And they sat there, and we're doing the ceremony, chanting and everything. We finished the ceremony, and the dogs just follow us for half a day. Wherever we went, these dogs. Some of the students say, "Oh, I want to take it home. It's so sweet. Can we put a collar and see the dogs?" I said, "Leave it alone." And then after a period of hours, very precise, they disappear. What was the relation? Well, the helpers, were they incarnated? Were that previous dogs of the owners that we were liberating? What happened?
Right.
So we don't know the mysteries of the animal kingdom and how it get close to us and how we just, at one point, we don't need them anymore, right? But if we put anything on them, our need to be good, our need to care for somebody, our need to, if we put our neediness, we're bounding the race of the dog kingdom. Let it free, as the child is, as any bird is, as Anne. Just keep walking, touch every soul with awareness, but don't possess.
I think that's really wise advice. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Is there? I wanted to ask you. We've kind of talked about this throughout, but I wondered if there was a specific element of this you might want to reflect upon. I ask all of my guests at the very end about. It's not a trick question. Don't worry. But the.
Did I look worried?
You did. You looked a little bit worried there. No, it's okay. But I wonder what dogs, whether it's your own dogs or the dogs you've worked with through Canine Flow, through all of the various things that you've done with dogs, or even just Fusa herself, what have dogs taught you about what it means to be human?
yeah, so they've taught me that humans are way more empowered than we've come to be in this culture and society, that we do have the ability to create our reality, and we do have the ability to make shifts in our realities. And it's really by recognizing our heart-based aspects of ourselves that really pulls ourselves into those empowerments, and not because it is all about the heart, but because we unify, and then by unifying we can access our soul more deeply. So the heart has its one way of being, and the mind has another way of being, and when those are in alignment, that's where we really access our soul. For me, that's what dogs have sort of led me to see, that there's this other way of being, and we don't need to be in the mind-based side of things.
And I want to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests, actually. And I know that you have previously had a dog in your life. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what has your dog or animals in general taught you about what it means to be human?
Yeah, we were talking before we started the interview, and we talked about our animals kind of mirroring ourselves. And so with my dog, Sam, he was definitely a mirror. You mentioned anxiety and sort of like the stacking anxiety. So anytime I was anxious, Sam would let me know. He would start doing things to make me know that he was anxious. And then I would get more anxious, and then he would get more anxious. So it was such, wow, it was just such a learning experience to have him. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, I wanted to ask you one final question that I
Sure.
ask all of my guests.
Okay.
And this is, what have dogs, whether that's your own dogs or other dogs you've worked with, dogs in general, what have they taught you about what it means to be human?
I think dogs have taught me to be in the present, because they aren't ever looking at the past or looking at the future. They are right there in the now. And that's what I love about being with dogs, is it brings me to the present. And that's really important to me, because I am one that's always 3 or 4 steps ahead and running through life. And so every time I'm around a dog, it's like, no, stop, breathe, and be present. And so the more I'm around dogs, the more presence I have. And I really, really value that.
Rachel, this has been such a wonderful conversation. We're going to have you back, because there's so many more things that we can go into, and I'm really excited about that possibility. But I also wanted to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests, and you've kind of talked a little bit about aspects of this, but I thought I'd give you an opportunity to reflect on it for yourself kind of more specifically. And that is, what do you feel that dogs, whether it's dogs in general that you've worked with or your own dogs, have taught you and are teaching you about what it means to be human?
I think they keep it so simple. For me, dogs, we've massively overcomplicated the healing process. And if you have a dog in your home, they are constantly there guiding you, giving you that like no bullshit version of who you honestly are. And from all the whole spectrum, the bits you like, the bits you don't like. And I think when we keep it that simple, like, our dogs are our ultimate mirrors for what it is we have yet to heal and learn about ourselves. Did that answer the question? I feel like I've gone in a bit of a sec.
No,
But
absolutely.
I just think I like to keep things so simple. And I think maybe that is one of the joys of dogs, is as humans, we love the intellectual dopamine, don't we? We love, and I get that, like, I love learning about things, but actually I love the simplicity of dogs, how life can be really simple if we listen to them in a different way.
Indeed, indeed. I
Yeah.
have one final question for you that I ask all of my guests. And that is, what do you feel that your dogs or your dogs you've seen in practice have taught you about what it means to be human?
Well, they don't judge, but they're also very honest. Like, for example, the other day I was shoveling some gravel that was plowed or where it shouldn't be. And then my neighbor's dog came out and he basically whacked from a distance, and then he ran right back in the house. I'm like, excuse me, how about being a little more polite here? And so I was a little disappointed that he didn't actually come and say hi. Well, he's an interesting dog with an interesting history. But in any case, so he went back inside, and then about 2 or 3 minutes later, he came back out with a toy. So I had the interpretation of, he didn't want me, he didn't want to say hi. So I felt a little rejected, with a smile on my face, obviously. But still, I'm like, I wanted to say hi. Why are you, leaving? And then he came back and brought a toy, which was even better, which meant like he wanted to actually come and play, So, yeah, I don't know what I got out of that, but basically that, I interpret things in a certain way when they're actually not that. So, in a way, they're teaching me to look at things and interpret things with a more empowering view, I guess. Because we generally have an idea, we judge something, but what if it's not that? Is there a more empowering interpretation, a more loving and a more kind interpretation of what just happened in general, whatever it is? So that's one thing that I've learned, or I'm learning, I should say, because I'm kind of hard on myself, I have to admit.
I think we all are. That's beautiful. And I think that's a huge lesson that dogs are teaching us, that we make a lot of assumptions and we build stories around those assumptions in our heads and operate from those stories and see the world from those stories. And it's a great reminder. It's a great example that you just shared of like, actually, that's not at all what was going on. He was just letting you know, hold on a second. I'm going to go get a toy. I'll be right back.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but I wanted to ask you a question that I ask each of my guests, and because I know that you're a dog mom as well. What have your dogs taught you about what it means to be human?
Oh, that's such a good question. I have so many answers. They've taught me a lot. And I find that because I have two very different dogs, they've taught me different things. I think fundamentally, one of the biggest things is to be present. Dogs are so in the moment and they're just so joyful all the time. Even when they maybe have a scrap with each other, or they get afraid for a split second because the postman arrived and they're barking, then it's gone. They forget about it and then they're like, oh, I'm happy again. So definitely being present and grateful for the moment that I'm in is a really big lesson. And I'll throw a second one in there if that's okay. The second lesson, which really my second dog has taught me, he's a rescue and we've had him for about 3 years now, but he has quite a few behavioral kind of reactivity issues. And actually this conversation has made me realize this, is he has really taught me to take the pressure of expectations. Because I think before we got him, I had an idea of what life would look like with two dogs. My first dog, we got him as a puppy. He's pretty chilled. You can take him anywhere. We didn't really have to think, or try as hard to have an enjoyable, easeful lifestyle with him. So I think when we got Monty, who is the rescue, I had this kind of vision and idea of what life would look like, of us going to the park and for it to be really fun, and me throwing the ball around and going to the coffee shops and enjoying, you know, days out with both of them. And I think initially it was kind of like mourning the expectation that I had of what life was going to look like with both of them. But it kind of reminds me of what we've been talking about with human design, is that expectation was based on me wanting Monty to be a certain way and more of what I wanted, rather than appreciating him for who he is. And with time, he's taught me so much patience and to love him for who he is, whilst we carry on working on helping him feel more confident and more comfortable, but really appreciating the life that he does give me. Because there are things that I've had to, we as a family have had to do to adjust to him, that from one perspective, initially we didn't want to do, but from the other, it has had its own benefits. As an example, we moved house to be closer to the fields because it's much easier for Monty to be running around in a field than it is for him to walk in a kind of populated area, which we might not have done if we didn't have to. But now that we're here, we love it. So it's appreciating him for who he is, and just it reminds me to just appreciate people for who they are and support them and being their best version, whilst also accepting them for how they show up.
Oh, I love that. And I can echo, that's been a big learning for me with Lucky as well. And I have to say, it's a fairly recent learning where I realize, in looking back with how I've engaged with him, how much I have tried to make him fit in, or I've tried to change his way of responding to the world because I found it uncomfortable or other people found it uncomfortable. And when I started switching my mindset to really both accepting him and almost assuming like, well, is it okay? Can it be okay? Can I be okay with the fact that he may never change? This may be permanent. And actually, when I made that kind of shift, I know that I shifted my energy and he has shifted as a result of that.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's totally amazing. I love
Yeah.
that though. It's wonderful. I wanted to ask you one more question, and it's a question that I ask all of my guests. And that is, what have dogs, whether that's the dogs that you've been working with in terms of your clients, or what has Bodhi taught you about what it means to be human?
Oh, do you know, I was going to think about this in advance and I completely forgot to, because I did. I heard you talk about it. I thought, gosh, that's a really difficult question for me. I think what all of my clients, the canine clients, have taught me is you absolutely have to treat every single one and every single human as an individual. Like, you can't go in like I know our brains are programmed to come in with judgments and predetermined ideas, but trying to keep that open and to really see, what is this dog telling me? What is this person telling me? Like, what do they need? Like, the individuality, like every single person, every single living being on the planet is completely unique, and trying to approach it with that in mind. And it's so hard. Like, our brains are our brain is desperately trying to shortcut things. I understand that, but trying to keep it open, and that way both dog and human can teach you so much if you just listen more. I think.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you for joining us. And I wanted to ask you one last question that I ask all of my guests. And that is, what have dogs, whether that's dogs that you've had as a child or even your parents' dogs, or sort of generally, what have they taught you about what it means to be human?
I would start, I suppose, with the more emotional side, being that love is absolutely unconditional. And pets really show you what that is, because they bring you. I have a cat, And I wanted my children to experience an animal in the home to understand about that deeper connection that you can have with a non-human. And it reminded me so much of that hugely unconditional love that is so much more than you ever expect it to be. And seeing the relationships of those around you with that animal is just such a wonderful, wonderful experience. But I also have to say, they also make you realize that it's fun to move because they love moving. So I couldn't not say that as well. And we should learn from our children the way they move, but we should also learn from our pets and our animals about just being happy to bound around and have fun, and love moving and love walking. So I think there's two parts to it.
Oh, I love that. Just the sheer joy of being in the body. Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Totally.
Oh, that was such a great answer. Thank you for sharing. Oh, thank you for joining us. And I wanted to ask you one last question that I ask all of my guests. And that is, what have dogs, whether that's dogs that you've had as a child or even your parents' dogs or sort of generally, what have they taught you about what it means to be human?
I would start, I suppose, with the more emotional side being that love is absolutely unconditional. And pets really show you what that is because they bring you. I have a cat, and I wanted my children to experience an animal in the home to understand about that deeper connection that you can have with a non-human. And it reminded me so much of that hugely unconditional love that is so much more than you ever expect it to be. And seeing the relationships of those around you with that animal is just such a wonderful, wonderful experience. But I also have to say, they also make you realize that it's fun to move because they love moving. So I couldn't not say that as well. And we should learn from our children the way they move, but we should also learn from our pets and our animals about just being happy to bound around and have fun, and love moving and love walking. So I think there's two parts to it.
Oh, I love that. Just the sheer joy of being in the body. Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Totally.
Oh, that was such a great answer. Thank you for sharing. And I wanted to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests, and I'm sure we have touched on elements of this, but I wanted to give you a chance to reflect specifically on this. And that is, what do you feel that dogs, whether the dogs that you've worked with or your own dogs generally, have taught you about what it means to be human?
The humility is really underrated. I think presence, doing nothing in a world where we feel like we always are supposed to be doing something, like we literally guilt trip ourselves for being, when most animals in nature spend an incredible amount of time being, saving energy for the important, necessary doing. Dogs teaching me that they are dogs, that they are beings, helps me remember that I'm a human being, not a human doing. And they're always inviting me back into that moment. And the humility of just being another organism, right? Like dogs aren't out there trying to conquer all the other organisms. Other species aren't out there trying to conquer all the other organisms. They're playing their part as their niche, their little cog in the greater wheel of the whole big orchestra of life. And I think we tend to have some delusions of grandiosity as a species. And I love the humility that animals offer us. And in that moment, just that it's the present moment is always enough. And it's the only place we can work from. And that's where the magic happens, right? So it's enabled me. Every dog has taught me more about that and checking my ego and not white knuckling life, but being curious like a kid with wonder, a real spirit of wonder about this natural world that we live in, so that I can have the appropriate humility and reverence for it and the gratitude of just getting to be a part in it.
That is so beautiful. So beautiful. And I couldn't agree more. I feel like that's one of the biggest lessons that I've received from Lucky as well. So that's fantastic. Oh, I love that so much. I love it. And I'm going to ask you one final question that actually just you can say, I feel like I've already said this, but a question that I ask all of my guests, and it's generally aimed towards dogs, but I open this up towards horses as well, is what do you feel like horses or dogs have taught you about what it means to be human?
Oh goodness, I think what they've taught me to be always emotionally available for people, to not have judgment over other people's lives, to not try and force your opinion on how they should live their life. And being human, it is at times so complex and so complicated, but horses have showed that by being present and taking time and slowing down, you start to appreciate life on a whole new level. And same thing with dogs. I mean, having dogs in my life, they've taught me also unconditional love and what that looks like and what that means, and to be there for someone when they're going through the worst day of their life, and being selfless. And I was there when my beautiful Millie passed away 3 weeks before Christmas. I was there. I said goodbye to her and thanked her for everything. And I think what they also teach in being human is thank you and being grateful. And animals, whether they're big, small, they're here for a good time, not a long time. And they live life to the full. They may just want to chase a ball every single day or eat grass every single day, and that's their idea of living life to the full. And having animals in your life, it shows you, hey, start living, and whatever that means to you, and it's yours, your life, and no one else's. Life is so individual and special, and it's short-lived. And so do what you want, how you want, but do it in a way that is serving of you and serving of others. Animals don't go out to hurt. They don't go out to cause harm. They will do it, fight or flight. They have to be provoked, and it's learned behavior. Sometimes it's a protection defense mechanism, but they don't go out to hurt. And I think humans can take that away, and I think that's what it means to be human. Be kind, but be strong. Offer help to those who need it, and that unconditional love and no judgment, and live life the way you want, and live abled in the way that serves you best, with so many animals around you at the same time.
I couldn't think of a more empowered and exciting way to end this episode. That is absolutely perfect. Thank you, Rhi Anderson. Thank you so much for being my guest today. This has just been an absolute joy and delight, and I'm so excited to see what starts to evolve for you. You've got an incredible future ahead of you.
Thank you.
Of course, of course. And I wanted to ask you one final question that I ask all of my guests. And that is, what have dogs, either your personal dogs or the dogs you work with, taught you about what it means to be human?
Oh, wow, this is a question. So what I especially love in my dogs is, I'm not sure if this is about how to be human, but how to be a part of nature, and that we are not so much above nature and outside of it. Because when I'm out with my dogs, I always try to see the world through their eyes, even if I cannot really smell what they smell, but I think it's so interesting to see what they are interested in, and it's a completely different perspective. And I think this brings me closer to nature, because I have to admit, sometimes I'm also on my phone when I'm out and about, and then I remember, okay, to put the phone away and take interest into my dog's world. What are they doing? What are they experiencing at the moment? And yeah, I think this is really interesting.
That's beautiful. What a wonderful answer. Thank you for that. Oh, this has been such a joy. And I'm delighted to have this conversation with you selfishly because this is really fun for me. But I also know that people are going to get so much out of it. And I think you offer a really beautiful and practical way for people to really experience what I think is at the core of what we're all looking for, which is a connection to ourselves and to everything around us. We fill that need with all this external stuff, but really at the core, we just want to feel connected.
It comes right back around to that very first workshop I did with Anna Breitenbach, which was I didn't feel lonely anymore. But what I've learned since then is that it's not just about not being lonely. It's about one of the purposes of being human and being alive, I've learned, is to love and to be loved. And that expands to experience the love from all of nature. That abundance, that joy, that scrumptiousness of life. That's what we have access to. Yeah.
Oh, I love it so much. Normally I ask all of my guests at the end of the interview what they feel that dogs, or in your case, like nature, more than nature, have taught them about what it means to be human. But I feel like you just answered that. But if you have anything else that you want to reflect on with that, you're welcome to.
I think I'll leave it at that. If that's what you take away from this conversation, to know, even if you don't feel it yet, to know on a deeper level that you are loved and that you have every right and it is your responsibility to love.
Oh, I love that so much. Saskia, this has been such a treat, just such a joy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for your time, your energy, your generosity of spirit. I know that people are going to take so much away from this, so thank you so much. Oh, I love that. I love that. I am going to ask you one final question, though,
sure.
that I ask all of my guests. And this might be related to Dio particularly, or it might be dogs in general, in your experience with them. But what do you feel that dogs have taught you personally about what it means to be human?
Do we have another hour or? Oh my gosh, I got like goosebumps when you asked me that. How can I bring this together? Honestly, I think that Dio specifically, I mean, I had dogs when I was younger, but Dio has been my only dog as a fully formed adult person. So he's brought me the most experience. And I think that he has taught me to practice mindfulness in the smaller, more regular, everyday moments. And that has transformed my own mental health in pretty significant ways. I used to think mindfulness and the practice of mindfulness needed to be like sitting down and making time to meditate and, getting the apps that would guide me and the pillow to sit on and all of that. And really, he taught me that simplicity is the best way to go about really anything. Simplicity and curiosity. And I feel like that's contributed to my growth as a human in ways I probably can't even describe.
Oh, I love that so much. That's so beautiful. Oh, and what a legacy he's leaving.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. He is everything. He really is. I'm so grateful for him. And I'm at a point where I'm grateful for the challenges we've had because that's what has created this. And I love doing this.
I wanted to ask you one final question that I ask all of my guests. And that is, what do you feel that Rosie Dumpling has taught you about what it means to be human?
An open and loving heart. You just have to look at a dog to see the unconditional love, the loyalty, the friendship. They are so pleased to see you, even if you've only been gone 5 minutes. So she showed me, because I can be a bit serious, she showed me how to have fun. So, for example, I might be wanting to have a little snooze because I haven't slept very well one night. So I'm lying down in the afternoon on the bed, and all of a sudden, just as I'm about to close my eyes, I'll hear ee 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 ee. And she's got her little squeaky donut, and she starts to run backwards and forwards. She reminds me that life is fun. And I don't have to get uptight about that. I don't have to think I'm meant to be having a rest. And so I start giggling. So she's shown me to be in the moment, and also they are so kind. I mean, I'm not talking about, she can bark at cats and stuff, but generally speaking, they're just so innocent. They're innocent. And we have such a duty of care to animals that share their lives with us, to make them as wonderful as possible. And my one wish with little Rosie Dumpling is that she feels that she's had a happy life. She certainly gives that impression. So she's taught me to bring out the more refined human qualities of love, kindness, gentleness, and fun. And joyfulness. We do a lot of joyful things together.
Oh,
may the joy be with you.
Oh, I love that. What a legacy for her. That's amazing.
Yeah. Bless her socks.
But I will ask you one last question, which is related to dogs.
Okay.
It's a question that I ask all of my guests. And it's what has Sophia or other dogs in your life, from your perspective at this point in your own story, taught you about what it means to be human?
Oh, wow. I would say she has shown me, and other dogs too, the wild, untamed element. And although she's a domesticated animal, and humans are the most domesticated animals of all, she's taught me about that playful, uninhibited part of myself that I have learned over the years to kind of press down and not fully express, and how joyful that is. And in playing with her, oh my God, it's so fun. Just, letting go and getting into her experience and what is she feeling. And I think the other critical thing is about being in the moment. Dogs don't live in the past or the future. Maybe they've been scarred by trauma, psychologically, but they don't dwell on the past, I don't believe. They don't worry about the future, I don't think. They're very present moment. I think that's why they forgive us for things. And oh my God, I would love to be that present and just chilling in the moment. Boy, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, what is that like?
Right. Right.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Such great wisdom. Thank you for that. I wanted to ask you one final question that I ask all of my guests. And that is, what have your dogs or the dogs that you've worked with clients taught you about what it means to be human?
That this life is meant to be experienced. And from each of my dogs, I've learned different things. Maggie was reactive, and I've learned how to communicate with clarity with her. With Orbit, she's learned me, through her, I've learned how to be more patient and not worry so much. And Mr. Higgins, I call him the puppy, but he's 2, but he's still a puppy.
He's still a puppy.
He's taught me the joy and the silliness of life. And, dogs actually have no expectations. They show up and they love every moment. They don't show up and have any ideas about what else they should be doing. They're just very accepting of what is. And they're very forgiving of us too. When we're on our phones and we're not paying attention, they are very patient. And no matter what we're doing, there they are. We might be busy, there they are. We go out for a walk, there they are. They're always there. So dogs have taught me how to be more in alignment with just what is in front of me and appreciating it at that moment.
I can't think of a better way to end this episode, this conversation. Thank you so much, Hannah. You're an absolute delight. And I would say that you are a blessing. So thank you for coming on and joining us today. Thank you again for listening to this very special 6-month anniversary episode. And thank you to all of my guests who made it possible. Here's to another 6 months of beautiful conversation on how we can best nourish our dogs and ourselves, mind, body, and soul, as we discover along the way what dogs are teaching us about what it really means to be human. And again, congratulations to Em at Summit Dog Rescue in Boulder for being the winner of the free animal communication session with me. If you have a topic that you'd like me to cover, or you have a suggestion for a guest that you'd like me to reach out to, please let me know. I'm all ears. You can reach me on Instagram at Mystic Dog Mama. All right, until next time.